Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm. Tasty beverage.
Is that your pig? Is that your pig juice right there, man? Is that what you're doing? Is that your pig juice?
I got a flip flop any.
And all right, so we're off and running here on Go with the Flow, presented by RS Andrews. We'll turn our attention back to Georgia before we're done with a look at the total points expectation for the Dogs on the road at Auburn. But for now, let's bounce around the rest of the SEC here for a moment. And if Georgia was one of the most impressive SEC teams last week, the team on the other side of that was Arkansas, and Arkansas finds itself this Saturday matching up with another team who took it pretty hard last week. That's Ole Miss. However, Rebels are back in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium this Saturday. Chance to host the suddenly reeling Razorbacks after the 37-0 loss at Georgia last week. Number here sits with Ole Miss as a 6-point favorite against Arkansas here in this spot. Two teams that were as hot as could be before last Saturday. Who gets back on the winning side of things this upcoming week, Mike? Ole Miss, 6-point favorite there in the Grove against Arkansas. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a game last year that Arkansas, was able to pick off Matt Corral 6 times. And, they went to that defense, that modified defense that they've stuck with, because they're able to stop the run against most teams playing with that 3-man front, obviously with the exception of Georgia. But, man, this is one I really want to pick Arkansas, because I think so much is Sam Pittman, and but realistically, I just can't do it. I've got to go with Ole Miss to take this game and cover the spread at home.
Jeff, what do you think? Arkansas and Ole Miss here.
Yeah, I guess I kind of still view this as a line of scrimmage game, as well as Ole Miss can throw it around. I think Arkansas will have a little bit of a mean streak after what Georgia did to them the last week. Both of them played really physical football games, but when I see that Arkansas is getting some points on the road at the Grove, I think this will be a close game. But I'm going to take those points and go with Arkansas in this one.
Split decision, Connor. Break the tie between Arkansas and Ole Miss with the Rebels as a 6-point favorite.
Yeah, the SEC did Arkansas no favors. This is their 3rd straight game against a ranked team away from home. I think that's going to be very difficult. This is a big, response for both these programs, and I think we're going to learn a lot about both Ole Miss and Arkansas in this game. I know, the body blow theory with teams not playing well after they play Georgia and not playing well after they play Alabama will be put to the test here. I think Arkansas is the stronger program, and because of that, give me Arkansas +6 here. I don't know if they win outright, but I do think they're going to be able to keep it within that 6-point margin.
Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers agree 74% on the side of Sam Pittman's Hogs. They just like Sam Pittman, so that's not to be surprised by. It is worth pointing out that before last Saturday, Arkansas and Ole Miss were arguably 2 of the 5 best teams in the country against the spread. Ole Miss had been 3-0 with an average cover margin of more than 10 points per game. Arkansas before last Saturday had been 4-0 with an average cover margin of more than 13 points per game. So both these teams this season, prior to what happened to them last week, had been really very good against the spread. I agree with something that Connor said, though, that I do think that Arkansas is the more sound program. I think you have a deep coaching staff on the Arkansas side. Sam Pittman said something this week that got my attention. He said that he was going to let the Georgia game get his team beaten twice. I do take that seriously here. And I think winning, in Vaught-Hemingway is a pretty stiff challenge for Arkansas. Maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't. But 6 points seems like a bargain for me. So I'll take the Razorbacks plus the 6. That puts the flow on the side of Arkansas here in this spot there as well. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take the Hogs?
See, you're still boycotting the state of Mississippi. That's probably going to bite you here to your quest to try to go back-to-back weeks with a winning record. But even though the Razorbacks are 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 meetings against the Rebels, I am going against the flow. I'm going to take Ole Miss at home. They just have way too much firepower for Arkansas here. The other thing is Arkansas has lost their last 5 road games as well. So I don't think it bodes well for Pittman in this situation where they're headed right now. Give me Ole Miss to cover the 6.
It's a good point. You and Connor both going to bring it up. Long time away from the friendly confines of Northwest Arkansas here for the Razorbacks. That is the one big concern that I have there. But I do think this Arkansas coaching staff, Dari, is better than what Ole Miss brings to the table, and so that should be a very interesting contrast there on Saturday. Pretty fun game. How about our next game in the SEC here? As Vanderbilt, one of the rare times we'll ever talk about them coming off at least an outright win, if not a cover. They did not cover last week against UConn. Now going on the road to Florida, which is reeling after losing last Saturday at Commonwealth Stadium against the Kentucky Wildcats there at Kroger Field, but obviously still gigantic favorite. Back where they've played well thus far this season in the Swamp, 38.5-point favorite against Vanderbilt for a Gators team that's likely to be in a pretty foul mood all the way around. Mike Griffith, will start with you. What do you think of the Gators giving 38 and a hook there at Ben Hill Griffith?
I think Vanderbilt's one of the worst SEC teams I've ever seen. They're pathetic. I can't even believe we picked a non-conference Vanderbilt. I'm still upset at you for that, Brandon. I actually spent time watching that game and I was cursing you. No Vanderbilt. I'm Florida covering.
Jeff, what do you think? 38.5 is the number.
First of all, guys, does that hook really bother anybody in this one? I mean, come on. If you were worried about you didn't see that game last week. I thought Mother Nature provided the best backdrop to that UConn Vanderbilt game. Dreadful scenery, dreadful theater. Man, those Gators are going to cover Florida. That could be 39 and a half. That would still cover. I would still lay those points here.
What do you think, Connor? A lot of love for the home favorite here.
We're going reverse Dari with Vanderbilt every week now. He famously always picks Alabama.
Right.
Vanderbilt is the reverse Dari team. We will always pick against Vanderbilt. Worked out last week when we picked UConn just on general principle, and we're going to stick with that principle this week. So give me Florida minus 38 and a half.
Well, Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers, they do disagree, but that's only because they don't ever take Florida. 63% on the side of the Vanderbilt Commodores here. And, yeah, I mean – it's one of those things. I'm not quite so sure how high you'd have to make the line for me to think that Florida's not going to cover. This is what they do. They cover games at home. They beat up on lousy competition at home. They do that pretty well. I mean, I really would be very curious to see how high it'd have to get before I'd be like, oh, I don't know. Maybe I like Vanderbilt there in that spot, but it ain't 38 and a half. I think Florida moonwalks past that number there. And, Dari, maybe it's all being made way too easy here, but what do you think? The flow is on the side of Florida. You want to go with the flow there?
I feel like I'm going to vomit because I'm going to take Vandy here.
No,
and it's going to be 2 weeks in the row that I've taken Vandy, and it's like gut wrenching. I mean, Vandy almost lost to UConn last week, which they are the absolute bottom of the barrel, the stuff that gets stuck to the bottom of your shoe and you can't get rid of it type football team. I just have a feeling in this game, Florida's looking ahead to LSU. They don't care about this game. He's going to get a lot of work with some other secondary, third tier guys. I see Florida winning this something, around 40s. Maybe they get in the 50s. And I think Vanderbilt somehow scores like 17 points or 14 points in this game.
I think it's a pretty good point in that high point spreads also have high variance, right? So it's like if Florida's not winning by 50, if they're not winning by 55 points, then there is a little bit of concern. Does a late score then swing the balance of this? And Dari, I'm going to give you credit here. If I'm remembering correctly, I believe you're the only one last week who was on the side of Mississippi State getting points at College Station. You won that one. So you've done well.
That's a little different. This one's this one's a gut. I mean, the other one, Mississippi State, is actually a pretty good football team. The reason they've lost have been some quirky issues. LSU did not really beat them. Mississippi State beat themselves by completely blown coverages that gave those big touchdowns. I mean, two completely different things. You don't want to give Mississippi State any credit, but they're actually a pretty sound football team.
Well, speaking of a sound football team, that has been what Tennessee looked like certainly last Saturday. And I got to tell you, one of the more eye-opening scores of the year for me was how easily Tennessee won at Missouri a week ago, which all of a sudden after kind of giving a little bit more of a game effort against Florida than you might would have thought. You kind of wonder, is Josh Heupel ready to somewhat turn the corner here in the midway point of his first season there at Tennessee? South Carolina was also a winner last week as well. A little bit of a scuffle against Troy, but the experts thought that game was going to be tight as it was. So a battle of first-year coaches here, with Tennessee back at home as a 10.5-point favorite against South Carolina. Mike, you were one of the few people last week that saw the Vols against Missouri. So how you seeing the board right now as a 10.5-point favorite there back at Neyland Stadium against South Carolina?
Yeah, I think momentum's a big thing. I'm going to take Tennessee to win, even though I was impressed with South Carolina against Georgia with those 4 passes over 35 yards. They were able to find a way to complete. They've kind of leveled off a little bit, and the fact that they're on the road in Neyland Stadium, I'm going to take the Vols to cover this game.
What do you think, Jeff? 10.5 is the number for Tennessee at home.
Yeah, obviously we saw the blueprint for Heupel's offense in Knoxville, just ground pound. I think this was a 4-point game a year ago. I think this will be a close game. I see that 10 points there where Tennessee is a heavy favorite, and I'm going to take those points and go with South Carolina. I think Tennessee will win this football game, but I don't see them beating South Carolina by 10. These teams, to me, are very evenly matched, much more evenly matched than that number suggests.
I think it's a fun game between 2 first-year coaches, and it's a split decision thus far. So, Connor, another chance for you to break the tie.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Tennessee has the same level of rushing success against the South Carolina team. They did pretty well against Georgia's rushing attack. And so because of that, I do agree with Jeff. I think it's going to be a close game. I think Tennessee probably still wins this game, but South Carolina finds a way to sort of muck it up and keep this closer than the 10.5 right there.
68% of Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers on the side of South Carolina here. And I'll just be completely honest with you. One of my strongest plays at the very beginning of the year was the under 6 on Tennessee for a season win total. What I saw last Saturday, and I'm typically the slowest person to change my mind on things. I have a tendency to really stick with my initial opinion until it's obviously proven wrong. Last week, what I saw against Missouri for Tennessee made me concerned they may go at least push on that 6, if not have a chance to go above that. So this is obviously a pretty crucial game for me, in that this is also one of the games I would have had circled as a loss for Tennessee before the season began. So maybe it's out of stubbornness, but I'm going to stay with where I would have been. South Carolina to cover this number, but also to win the game outright, which is a pretty big ask here as a 10.5-point underdog here in this spot. But that's where I was at the beginning of the season. I'm not quite ready to change my mind just yet. And that puts the flow on the side of South Carolina for this game there as well. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take the 10.5 for the Gamecocks on the road?
I've been wrong on Tennessee every game this year. When I think they're going to play, they kind of don't. And then when I think they can't play, they do what they did last week. So, this one I just flipped the coin and it landed on Tennessee. So I'm taking Tennessee to cover the 10.5 at home.
It feels like that kind of game. And I guess you're thinking, well, if a coin flip makes sense, maybe 10.5 is a lot of points, but it does feel like that kind of game. And Dari, I know how you feel when you feel like you've been on the wrong side of one team, no matter what side you've been on. I certainly have felt that way a lot this season there as well. Speaking of the Kentucky Wildcats, we mentioned a moment ago, what a stand-up performance was last week for them there at Kroger Field Commonwealth Stadium. They get a chance to do that again on Saturday, this time in the role of home favorites. 3-point number as LSU comes in. Of course, it's an LSU team that is now pretty significantly reeling after their loss to Auburn last week, and more bad news this time on the injury front with star defensive back Derek Stingley undergoing a foot surgery that is going to leave him out for the foreseeable future. And you wonder if he will play again this season. He's certainly not playing on Saturday against Kentucky. The schedule for LSU after this is also brutal. So that's a really, really important thing to keep in mind here there as well. It does not get any easier after this week there for the Fighting Tigers there on the road. It is a 3-point number. Mike Griffith, what do you think about Kentucky this time as a favorite against LSU?
Yeah, I seem to remember a game at Kentucky that the Wildcats had all but won, and LSU pulled it out with some miraculous play. Yeah. I just don't have a lot of faith in Kentucky's ability to handle success. And LSU, I think this is backs to the wall for Ed Orgeron. I think this is a game that he probably needs to win to save his job this season. unless he has some miraculous upset in the bag down the road, which I really don't see. But this is a game where LSU has more talent. I think that I'm going to go chips in on LSU. I'm going to go with LSU in this football game.
There you go. What do you think, Jeff Sintown?
Yeah, this is a tough one for me, guys. I think what goes through my mind when I looked at this was how Dari was so transparent and like breaking out some coins and kind of like flipping them against the wall. I'm just going to go big on momentum here. I'm going to go big on home field, and I'm going to go big on having played a very good team in Florida and beating them. I think LSU won't be the same type of challenge that I think Florida was a week ago. I think Kentucky's going to win this football game. Give me Kentucky here in this one.
Another split decision between our scribes. Connor, what do you think?
Yeah, I believe I was the lone wolf on Kentucky last week, and that proved to be a winner.
No. I was on the side of the Wildcats as well.
Excuse me, Mr. Adams, my first winning week of the season. How could I forget? So I'm going to stick with Kentucky here again. I think the biggest reason LSU had 32 rushing yards against Auburn last week. And this Kentucky team, I think, is going to want to play a physical game. They're going to muddy it up. I like the under in this game, and I like Kentucky to win at home and continue that unbeaten season.
Yeah, 71% of Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers on the side of Kentucky here there as well. And, look, I think that LSU has been a pretty fun contrarian play over the last couple of years because while their overall performance in the SEC standings is typically pretty low, the fact of the matter is, most of like the professional gamblers, have had them power rated as kind of a top 10 team. It's just kind of a funny dichotomy between what I think they're treated like in the betting community and what they're treated like on the field. I think now you have to recalibrate all of that. When you look at their results this season, not only did they not cover against UCLA week 1, they lost outright. They only beat Central Michigan 49-21, failed to cover against Mississippi State. Not only did they fail to cover last week against Auburn, they lost outright. I think that when you look at what's happening here with LSU, you're starting to see a team that's not doing what it once was. Ed Orgeron as a coach has been very strong against the point spread, maybe every game other than Alabama for the most part. Winning record on the road, winning record in SEC play, winning record top 10. They're just not covering those games anymore the way they once did. If Kentucky's on the road this week, one of our panelists mentioned letdown factor. If Kentucky's on the road this week, I totally see that letdown factor. I think they get the gift of being back at home again. Same thing I said about Florida the week after playing close against Alabama. It'd be a good spot to go against Florida the following week where they're not playing at home, but playing at home kind of mitigates against some of that. I think the same thing's true for Kentucky here as well. I'll take Kentucky minus the 3. I don't feel strongly about it, but I think the evidence here, the preponderance of that evidence points to the Wildcats. So I'll take Kentucky. That puts the flow on the side of Kentucky. Dari, you want to go with the flow with BBN?
I do. I like Kentucky at home. I think they're going to follow up that big win and hold their home field.
Yeah, I just don't think this is the same LSU anymore. And I don't know if there's a late season deal like we saw last year against Florida or not, but this is just not that team right now. Oh, I remind you, you're watching Go with the Flow presented by RS Andrews right now. Of course, air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric. RS Andrews can be trusted to do all that for you. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised. For the price is promised, it means air conditioner units. Listen, we all try to make our AC unit last as long as we possibly can. Some of you have been doing that now for more than 25 years. If that's been you, then your system's probably to its last legs now. And so you're starting to think, well, can I get a little more life breathed into that unit? Well, yes, you maybe can. You can reach out to my friends at RS Sanders and get it that mega tune-up, get it back to factory fresh spec. It's only cost $99. So check them out online at rsandrews.com on all that. By the way, it's been fun to see the RS Andrews commercials also as a part of our high school football games each and every Friday night on Peachtree TV, CBS 4046.com. That's been a fun thing to see this year there as well. Let's turn our attention now to a game that at one point in time seemed way bigger than it does at the moment. CBS probably kicking itself in the shin for making this its prime time game this year. Each year they have a prime time game, and I don't think they've ever picked a worse one than Texas A&M right now hosting Alabama. Aggies 17.5-point home underdogs here, fresh off the disappointment against Mississippi State from a week ago. Alabama, of course, riding high after getting it going last week against Ole Miss, not just getting the win, but also getting the cover, and now going back to College Station, a place they've had success there in the past. Aggies are getting 17.5 points there at Kyle Field. Mike Griffith, what do you think about it?
Yeah, this is a tough game for A&M, obviously coming off a pretty embarrassing loss to Mississippi State. Trap game, looking ahead. I do know Mike Leach had some success there. Alabama got off to such a great start against Ole Miss, but, the second half, they weren't as dominant. And, that kind of raised a flag for me. I don't think that A&M has a great offense, but I do think they can run the ball. And that was something that Florida was able to do on Alabama. So I'm going to take Texas A&M to cover.
All right. A little bit of a contrarian play there from Mike. Interesting stuff. Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, that's one of those games where I sit there and go back and forth on it. But then I remember this is kind of Alabama here. I like Alabama. I like Alabama getting some more momentum. I don't think Texas A&M has a, rally the troops moment here right at all. I'm not scared of that number at all. Lay the points. Give me Alabama here as Alabama now has to keep up with Georgia in terms of the style points in front of the country. And I think that will be another asset for them in covering this margin.
17.5, Connor. What do you think about Bama and A&M in primetime?
I got cute last week thinking Ole Miss would backdoor their way to a cover. Almost got a little close, but not close enough to where they were going to cover there. I'm going with Dyer's rule. Give me Alabama here minus the 17.5. It's in that Bama zone where they're a 2 to 3 touchdown favorite, and they usually perform pretty well there. The Florida game notwithstanding.
96% of Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers agree on this. And listen, I've been under an obligation going to take A&M week to week because I was obviously high on them during the offseason. From a program standpoint, I'm actually still fairly high on A&M. And in fact, I think they'll play better football at some point in time this season. But I am under no obligation to take them here this week. I think Alabama's performance last week is a little bit of a warning shot that they are now ready to do what they pretty well do every October and November, which is go on kind of a run where they lay waste to opponents. I'm guessing that they are very motivated for this game, prime time, on CBS, chance to put on a good show here. I just don't see any compelling argument against Alabama really at all. It's a big number, but I'm going to lay that with no problem whatsoever. And that puts the flow on the side of Alabama. Dari, you're going to go with the flow and take the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, no doubt. It's going to be a Bama beatdown. A&M is going to be in 3-3. After this game, it's not good for a team that started in the top 5. I really like the over in this game. I think it's hovering around 50 points, but I really love that number. But I like Bama just to absolutely mop them up. A&M is done. I mean, their wins so far this year are against Kent State, Colorado, and New Mexico. It's trash.
Yeah. No, it has not been good at all. We'll turn our attention back to the SEC before we're done, and Georgia Auburn in particular. Let's step outside that for a moment for a couple of really good games outside the SEC, including this Saturday, Penn State going to Iowa. That game did not get the nod for ESPN's College Game Day, drawing the frustration of some Big Ten fans over that. But the game itself should be sensational. Iowa has been impressive all season long. Kinnick Stadium, will be rocking as Penn State comes in. But the Nittany Lions, also find themselves in the role of small underdog here in this one there as well. Iowa, the 2-point favorite here at home. Mike Griffith, the Big Ten well. You covered that league for a long time. What do you think of the Hawkeyes here as a 2-point favorite at home against Penn State?
Perspective here. Colorado State, the one team that Vanderbilt beat before UConn, was beating Iowa at halftime in that stadium, very overrated stadium. I'm going to take Penn State to win this football game.
All right, there you go. What do you think, Jeff Sintel? Iowa and Penn State here.
I think this is definitely one of those pretenders versus contenders type football game. I kind of liked where Iowa is as a program. I kind of like where they're kind of built. Penn State, Auburn. I've just seen Iowa continue to play good football. I think that program I think others have kind of echoed the sentiment when you're trying to figure out the tough pick here and a tough call each week, go with a stronger program. I think right now I like where Iowa's program is right now compared to Penn State. So I'm gonna go Iowa in this one.
So split decision here once again between our two scribes. Connor, another opportunity for you to break the tie.
You ever stick your hand down a garbage disposal, even if it's not on, but just to fish something out of that dropped in there? Sure. That's what playing Iowa is like right now, because while sure the garbage disposal can't magically flip on, you're sort of worried that it might. What they did in the second quarter to Maryland last week was one of the most humiliating displays of football I have ever seen from a defense. I love the way this Iowa team is playing right now. It's going to be an ugly game. And Penn State has had some real issues in Kinnick Stadium over the years, losing, I think, in 2009 to the Ricky Stanzi team, needing a walk-off touchdown the last time they played there. So give me Iowa here minus the 2.
Yeah, I think Iowa's just a better team. And I think you're talking about a relatively small number there on this. There's no doubt in my mind the Big Ten champions making the college football playoff. And I certainly have a portion of my mind carved out to the possibility it could be the Hawkeyes here. I think it's a big statement for Iowa on Saturday. I thought what they did against Maryland last week was real. I think it's worth paying attention to, and I think it's better than anything that I've seen from Penn State thus far this season. So I actually feel really good about this pick. Small number, Hawkeyes. I don't see any reason not to take them here in this spot. I've actually been good with Iowa thus far this season, so maybe that's clouding my judgment, but I like the Hawkeyes a lot here. Dari, you want to go with the flow and take the Hawkeyes?
Yeah, I do. I like the Hawkeyes at home. This is going to be a game with lots of punts. They've been winning with their defense, not their offense, and they're going to get it done. I think it's going to be a close game. Penn State will probably have a chance to take the lead or win, late in the game. But I think Iowa's defense is going to hold at home.
Yeah, obviously, if Penn State were to lose, one of the things you start hearing a lot more about is possibly James Franklin's name shows up for some other available jobs beyond just the USC job. If the LSU job were to open up, we could potentially see Franklin as a candidate maybe there. But that's a different topic for a different day. For now, two teams that will one day be doing this game as a part of an SEC footprint, now do it on Saturday as the marquee game in the Big 12. It was once known as the Red River Shootout. I guess it's the Red River Showdown now, I guess. But either way, officially, that's what it's called anyway. Texas getting a chance to go against Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a 3.5-point favorite there in that spot for a Texas team that we've seen lose at Arkansas earlier this year, and for an Oklahoma team that probably has not quite gotten its legs underneath it the way that a true college football playoff contender is supposed to. Obviously, tremendous history in this rivalry, and it is the spot for ESPN's College Game Day on Saturday. So Texas has earned a lot of praise here as of late. What do you think about the Longhorns? Mike Griffith as a 3.5-point underdog to Oklahoma.
Yeah, this is a game I'd really like to go with Texas and Sarkisian, but I just can't. He got beat by 3 touchdowns by Arkansas, something like that. I just had scratcher, not there yet. Culture not there yet. I'm going to go with Oklahoma, even though I'm not a huge Oklahoma fan. I just feel like the Sooners have been there at a nice, truly neutral site directly between the schools, number 4 or 5 metropolitan area of the country. Important game. I'm going to take Oklahoma.
Jeff, what do you think about the I almost call it the Red River Shootout. What do you think about the Red River Shootout here?
I guess we can call it the RRS. I go Oklahoma, better players, better program. I guess they have more to lose invested into this season. Overall, better talent base. Give me Oklahoma to win this one here.
Connor, what do you think? A little bit of Sooner talk right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Initially, I was like, don't be the dope that picks Texas here. This is such an obvious Oklahoma pick with the way that they've gone. I'm going horns up this week. Give me Texas. I think they have the best player in this game in Bijan Robinson. I think he's going to make enough plays. Casey Thompson, I think, is a capable quarterback for them back there, and I think they find a way, maybe not to win, but at least keep it within that 3 and a hook. I think the hook there is the big decider. And so because of that, give me horns up this week.
Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers on the other side here, 78% take Oklahoma. They don't typically take Texas. That's not necessarily a huge surprise. This is one of those games, every now and then you hear the stat mentioned of which side has the most money on it. I sort of imagine, just based on what I've heard over the course of the last couple of weeks from some of the gambling media that I follow, my guess is the money's probably on Texas here, despite the fact that they are the underdog. Over the course of the last 2 weeks, there's no doubt Texas has played better football the last 2 Saturdays than Oklahoma's played all season long. A better win than you think against Texas Christian last week on the road, putting up 70 against Texas Tech the week before that. Texas has become a little bit of a darling of the gambling community as of late. But my hunch is on Oklahoma here because, just the idea that Oklahoma is going to bow out as a playoff championship contender this early in the season, I'm assuming they have a little bit of rise up factor left in them. So from that standpoint, I'm going to take the flyer in Oklahoma. I told you I felt pretty good about Iowa over Penn State. I don't feel great about this because I just don't quite know what to make about Oklahoma as of yet. But I'm assuming that the people unanimously that had them as a playoff contender before the season began, they couldn't all be this wrong this quick. So maybe a little bit of a rise up against a Texas team that's actually earned some credit here over the course of the last couple of weeks. So I like to take the favorite in the spot. The half point is a big deal to me, but nonetheless, I'll take the Sooners. That puts the flow on the side of the Sooners. Do you want to go with the flow and take Oklahoma?
Do not hook 'em horns. I actually love this game. This is going to be a classic Red River shootout. I'm allowed to say that, right? Because I said it's a classic, so I'm predating it whenever they changed it. Oklahoma's just been squeaking by out wins each week. You know, they haven't dominated anything. They got a problem running the football. You know, Rattler is not a mobile quarterback running with his legs. He just wants to sit back there and pass it. So their offense isn't clicking. They're letting every team hang around. And this is the week it comes to catch them and bite them in their ass. This is a big game for Sark. It's only going to get worse this weekend for College Station. They're going to get beat down, and then Texas is going to beat Oklahoma. Big win for Texas this week. I absolutely love them.
I would agree. I say if you're even thinking about Texas in this game, just take a money line. Just take a money line because you're probably getting better juice there anyway.
Could be right. I tell you this, though. If you want to see a grown man cry, let Oklahoma win this game 37-34. because you should know that going into it. Yeah. That's a very strong possibility. If you want to see a grown man shed full tears, let Oklahoma win this game 37-34. Let that half point matter. But as we've mentioned a lot of times, over the course of the long haul, teams favored by 3.5 have a winning percentage against the spread compared to the teams only favored by 3. That's a little bit of a contrarian idea. Let's turn our attention back to the SEC. Georgia Auburn there for a moment. The total in the game on Saturday is 45.5. Of course, last week's game went way under for Georgia there against Arkansas, possibly a reversion back to form for the Bulldogs, which in ranked games, as we talked about last week, have been, quite the play in the under, although that's more of the home neutral variety. That's a true road game for Saturday. Mike Griffith, what do you think about 45.5 for Georgia Auburn as a point total?
Seemed low at first, but I'm going to, I've just got a feeling there's going to be some non-offensive touchdowns scored by Georgia, a return and a defensive touchdown, and Georgia will go over this week.
Wow. My goodness. I'm actually pretty surprised at that. That's interesting. Very interesting pick. Jeff Sentell, what do you think?
Georgia, Auburn, under. I like that this week, this play. That's where I'm looking at. That's where I'm sizing up this one.
Boy, Connor, you've been in this spot all day long. It seems like breaking a tie amongst Mike and Jeff. Jump in here on me on this one.
I mean, I said Auburn scoring 0 points. I don't think Georgia scoring 46 in this game. So give me the under here.
Yeah, Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers, 82% have the under here. I give Mike a ton of credit for jumping out there with the over because for me, it's a very difficult case to make because I don't think Auburn's going to score very much at all. I'll give Connor credit for having the guts to call it the outright shutout. I'll at least say that I don't think Auburn scores very much. And, I think on the basis of what we saw from Georgia a week ago, they're comfortable doing, I don't want to say just enough to win, but they certainly don't feel a lot of pressure to come out here and score, 50 in a game like this. To me, this is another one of those things where I'm not quite so sure how low the total would be for me to want to go over, but 45.5 is not even a decision for me right now. I'll take the under here in this spot. Dari, you want to go with the flow and take the under? How easy of a choice is that for you?
Yeah, I've been kind of going back and forth on this. I mean, you would think this is a really easy thing to take the under because, Georgia's only given up 4.5 points per game. Auburn only gives up 16 points per game. So that's got the makings of under written all over it. I am going to take the under, but I think it's going to get really close to that number, like a 31-13 type game. Georgia covers. I think Auburn's going to score. I think they're going to get in the end zone. I think Georgia's going to lead them a short field at some point in this game with a turnover, an interception or something that they do that gives them a short field that leads to points. But I think Georgia's defense isn't going to give up too much in this game. I like the under barely. barely like just getting right under that 45.
Mike, I'm not saying this is your reasoning for taking the under here, or I should say the over, but to me, an overplay is almost a play against Stetson Bennett because you might be concerned about the turnover. He's a little bit more turnover prone than JT Daniels is, that he's playing. That might give Auburn the short field, which does give them a chance, even against the stout Georgia defense, to score more points. But I mean, my argument, if I even want to consider the over, is the idea, as Dari said, at some point in time, Auburn's gifted the short field because of the turnover, and suddenly they have an easier chance to score points. But that to me seems to be, if you want to make the argument for the over, that would seem to be it.
That's one argument, and the weather's nice. I mean, this used to be a November game,
Yeah.
and it's played in a little bit warmer climate, and I do think that Auburn can strike deep. I think they've got a couple explosive players. They've got the best running back in the game in Bigsby. So I see this being about a 34-17 game, and that's 51.
We'll certainly watch that, see how it plays out. Good luck to everybody with their picks here this week. And for those of you that tune in and make your picks alongside us, best of luck with your picks there as well. Big thanks to RS Andrews making it all possible. As I've told you, you can find them online at rsandrews.com. All those systems in your house, air conditioning, the plumbing, all those things that you like to keep flowing, the water flowing through the pipes, the AC flowing through the vents. That's why we call this Go with the Flow, because they keep it flowing for you. So you can check them out online at rsandrews.com for a lot more on that. Also, our friends at BetUS for providing our point spread data. Check out betus.com. Use the promo code DN125 for 125% sign-up bonus when you make your initial deposit. And we will see you back here again next Friday at the same time for Go with the Flow, presented by RS Andrews. Enjoy the games, everybody.
So, quick question.